Good morning, everyone. You put a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear me.
Hey Eric, how you doing?
Good. Hey, JD, good to see you on there.
Yep, it's me.
How you been?
One day at a time.
Yep, yep. All right. So I put a little survey out a week ago or so, and it wasn't overwhelming. It was like pretty split, but the um, it was leaning towards doing a workshop on a workbook analyzer with the Tableau extensions. So I put together, or I've had one, and I've built many different ways for different things. But we're gonna build a workbook analyzer that will actually sit inside of the Tableau workbook. I've done many others that will be run in the browser and or just on your local machine. This one is actually going to be embedded in the workbook and and be able to provide. So we'll go step by step, but um, pretty much we'll be able to provide, the fields that are in the workbook, kind of a breakdown of everything in the workbook. So fields, tabs, calculated fields with the calculations, lineage of those calculations. Sorry, I have to get everybody admitted. More coming in. And also a nice breakdown of elements that are unused in the workbook. So, and that could be a field or actually a sheet. Maybe you have sheets that are not on any dashboard. Obviously, there still can be use for those, but this we'll build this to call those out. I'm gonna all right. Let me pull up one or a couple things here and we'll get going. And so I got to get a couple documents open and my workbook. Um, this will be, I'll be building this with Claude, prompting Claude. But I have different stages built, so we can kind of move forward and look at the outcomes while Claude is also building live, and we can take a look at how that works. But I needed to get a couple more documents up here. Okay, and I'll be able to, with what I've more recently put together, I should be able to provide the prompts that go through today as well. So let's get that started. I'll share my screen here. Okay. Let me start with a new window here. Okay. So I'm going to start just by sharing actually the kind of what we're going to attempt to build towards and how that works. So this is a dashboard extension. It's embedded in a workbook. One thing about this is the API for this embedded or dashboard extension, it can't actually read. It doesn't have information about the workbook file location or anything about the system that it's in. So it actually, what I wanted it to do was just automatically be or identify that or be able to run on the workbook that it's in. But since it doesn't have access to where it's actually sitting within a file system, then the first step is to just select that workbook. And that's how fast it is. This part wasn't preloaded or anything. So as soon as I told it the workbook to analyze it, it built all of this. So we have an overview, kind of gives you an idea of some warnings on things that you might want to look at as a developer. Like this has 420, this is a crazy workbook kind of, but it's got 423 fields and 373 of them are unused in this workbook. And the dashboard looks like this. Pretty basic bar charts and some KPIs. But you can see there's huge area or like huge opportunity for making the workbook more performant by hiding or excluding these fields from the actual build of the dashboard. So this goes through also, each of the calculated fields. Let me see if it looks like there are 42. It said, there's a badge here, 42 calculated fields. We get the function element of every field that's calculated. And then the next part, here's the unused fields. There could be a function in here to actually hide these automatically, with a button click. And then we've got lineage. So any calculated field that is relying on dependent on another field will show up in this list. So you can see the lineage. So let me go to monthly cases. Monthly cases, here's the formula, and it depends on, we can see here, pipeline month is part of the LOD. So pipeline month is a dependent, and then it also depends on this cohort. Let's see, tracking number. So it also identified tracking number, which is built into one of the other fields, like one of the other dependent fields here. So we're able to kind of navigate the hierarchy of a calculated field. Here's sheets and dashboards. These sheets are not on any dashboard, so this calls them out as orphan sheets. And then we get information, very little bit of information on the data source, which is a hyper extract in this case. So let's start building this. We're gonna jump over to Claude. We got a brand new session, and I'll be just pasting in some prompts here. And while those are running, I'll go through some of the other features. So this first prompt is going to, so I have a skill, and what I've been putting together is this skill that is very specific to extensions, so Tableau extensions, and it's actually helped a ton in working, or like preventing a lot of the errors that I would see in every extension I would build. There would always be this kind of progression of, this error would hit, and then we'd move along, we'd get through them all, but it was very it was consistent in the errors that I would see from a brand new start. So I started building a skill to kind of take care of a lot of those common issues that would arise. So there shouldn't be as many errors happening. There will still be, there's always like an element of newness to a build. So I'm gonna do that. Oh yeah, thanks, Michael. Michael actually has been testing this skill out, and has also had good success with it in getting past some of those common errors that pop up. So what this first, I'll share this also, like I'll share the final, what I just named X-ray, workbook X-ray. This is how it starts out. When I share this workbook, I'll share the workbook, and that will have like each of these stages. So these are the different stages we're gonna kind of prompt through, and see how it goes. So there's always I guess I'll just go through this first. So the initial element of this extension is just it just says starter. There's nothing really going on in this one. It's not until the second prompt that we get to where we're selecting a workbook. So if anyone is like really new to extensions, this one is a dashboard extension. So if you start an extension, or sorry, if you create a new dashboard and then you go to objects, there's an extension object, and you just drag that onto your dashboard. And that's going to prompt you with the extension selection window. And we're working with a local extension. So that's right here, access local extensions. And this is going to be where your files are saved. You're going to want to, what Claude is going to output is it's called a trex file. And that trex file is kind of the instructions on where to find all of the other elements. So basically an extension is a web. Do you have a question, Kishore? So basically all of these extensions are kind of web-based elements. You potentially can just take one of the, you could load this extension in a web browser. So what the trex file does is point Tableau towards where those web elements are being hosted or stored. So these, and this is what it looks like. It can be, any name. Mine are I usually have two versions of a trex. One is where I'm hosting it, if I'm hosting it publicly, and then my local host version. I'll select this and then actually go to where that is sitting. We'll look at what a trex looks like. So this is just the information about the extension. It's telling you where it's being served from. This one is just my local version. And it's got some information just that gets embedded into when you're building a trex. So let's look at that. And I don't know if I'm pretty sure it's T-Rex since the mascot is a T-Rex, but someone could correct me if that's wrong. But so here is what the T-Rex is, just an XML file. And we saw in there that, it was being hosted at this location on my local machine for this one. And then I just have information there. It's got an element for the author, description, and some other things that you are related to the like the version and naming and things. So this is kind of a standard for the extensions, and Claude knows all of this, like how this should be set to. So it's not anything you have to know, but it's good to know that this directly translates over to what's in this about. Actually, yeah. So partially what's in this about, and then also what's in the approved, or when you're approving the extension when you load it for the first time. So this is stage one. I'll put it back on. Make sure, actually. All right, that's loading. Let's see if Claude Finish will see. Um, I obviously have way too many VS Code windows open. So So here's kind of the process it went through. And it's going to, let me see, it actually put it, so the start folder wasn't in the project. Then, okay, that'll be something I'll update on the skill. It's looking for a starter directory or folder. So I'll just have it create that going forward if it's not existing. So this is going to be building in my X-ray. Okay. So it started building this in a new folder called my X-ray. We can see that here. And then it looks like it also will make sure that the future prompts aren't looking for the starter folder, but they're going to look for the my X-ray. So we can see in here what that prompt got us to. By dropping that here, and then if we access the local extensions again, and go to my X-ray and choose the trex file. So there's an error already. And this isn't one that I usually see. So the skill right now won't capture everything. It's I'll just tell Claude to update the skill with the solution to this error. And have it work through that. We'll look at the next prompt as well. So let me see. Sorry, the next prompt, I'll just queue it up here and then we'll walk through it. So it's gonna now look at the my X-ray folder that it's already discovered, and what it needs to know is if we're going to be using or selecting the TWB or the TWBX. The TWBX, if you haven't ever broken one open, it's it's actually just a TWB and a hyper file zipped. And so what the code can do is unzip that. And so we only want the analyzer to run on the TWB. So we can strip out the hyper and keep, this is especially good if you're working in, if you have this on a repository, something where you have different versions of the TWB, and trying to avoid saving the TWB plus the hyper with every iteration or version of your workbook. So this strips out that TWB and only works with the TWB portion, so that the data source doesn't have to be replicated every time. So let's just look in the finished workbook at that. So that would be stage one. That gets us to this point. So the starter is just basically information, or that this is going to run inside Tableau. The first, after this, the prompt that I was just reading, we would have this portion of the the analyzer extension where we can choose a workbook. Let's see what level we get to here with that first prompt. It's under stages, and we're on stage 1. Oops. It's actually already loaded. Sorry, should have been choosing the workbook. So that first, or the second prompt, which is the one after the setup, would just get us this information. And that prompt was basically looking at looking for that split. If it's a TWB, then it can just load it directly. And if it's a TWB, it's going to break out the hyper. So since the prompts are running pretty slow, let me see. Yeah, that fix is still running. So what I just shared was I won't run the prompts, I don't think. What I just shared was after this prompt. So the other part of that is that since the API doesn't really read from the workbook, this is actually so what the extension is doing is after I select a workbook, it's serving that workbook from the browser, or the web elements of this extension are that's what's doing the work on this, and then just serving it as a web page within this workbook. Trying to want to explain that or clear that up. If there's if you have questions on, I guess, on that part, then put them in the chat. But basically, this isn't running. It's not this. What you see isn't actually the piece that's opening up the workbook. All of that's being done from the web elements that I talked about, that are kind of like the backbone of the extensions. Michael, just to answer your question, the first prompt we did was just reading the skill that I had mentioned. So it's reading the skill, and inside the skill, it's looking for the starter, but it also created a new folder, the My X-ray folder. And
sorry, Eric, did you share that prompt in chat or anything like that? Or was it just...
that's a good idea. I will. So I'll put that in the chat here. So, and I just called that prompt 0. That's what got us to this level here. Prompt 0. It also it gives instructions on like starting the localhost and choosing a port for the localhost. And once that localhost is running, all of your, like, the trex is what points it at the correct localhost. If anyone's doing this kind of first time, and then I'll put in the second prompt, which is prompt 1. So prompt 1 is kind of like the shell of the extension within the workbook. Okay, so the prompt I just put in the chat is what gets us here. So it's looking at the workbook, it finds the worksheets, dashboards, data sources, and gives us these really higher level stats. So the next prompt is when we get into the calculated fields. So this I'll put in, it's going to be prompt 2. and we'll call it calculation inventory. So let me have it retry this. I can keep that going. All right. All right. After the prompt 2, then we're at this level. So we still have the higher level stats, but we also then add the calculated fields. What's really nice about this, and I didn't spend time modifying this part, but I know a lot of times I'm trying to look at when you break open a calculated field inside desktop, then if it references another calculated field, it's always trickier, not tricky, but like more difficult because within Tableau itself, as far as I know, I haven't ever been able to open like 2 calculated field windows. So usually I'm like taking a screenshot of one of those and then opening the next one to try to trace through like a calculated field hierarchy. And what we'll look at this at the end or once we get through all of these, but that's one thing I would build into this is being able to easily walk through the full hierarchy of a final calculated field. So that's one thing I'd be adding, but the nice thing on this is, let's say, let me look at the final and find a good candidate for lineage, but there's LOS days. So this one's using the cohort, which is a calculated field. It's returning details. That's the other thing I hadn't necessarily noticed, but it looks like this is calling out, let's say, oh, it's calling out, it might be, actually, I'd have to ask, but it looked like the purple light on this was for an LOD because the badge is purple, but I was also thinking that the purple is probably calculated field. If I look at, yeah, it doesn't use it here. So I believe that the purple light or dot on here is representing calculated fields, and green is like, that's a field that's in the data source. So we can see like this pipeline month is nested under and dependent on these higher 2. So if I go to this, what I was trying to get at was is searching. So back to the pipeline month requires these 2 calculated fields. So if I go to the search and do pipeline, then I do get all of those, all of the fields related to pipeline month. So I do have the hierarchy where, let's see. So like P12 relies on pipeline month. So does T12 and monthly cases. And to create pipeline month, then relying on a field from the data source. So I had that maybe backwards on So these are relying on pipeline month. So that's so it's used by these, yeah. Something I hadn't noticed when I was building this, but I don't know what other preferences might be, but the we have this. Not able to get that back. Let me see. Kind of stuck on this window, it seems. Anyway, let me see if it comes back now. Let's go. Okay, here. Well, this is LOS days, pipeline month. Let's go back to LOS. Anyway, what I hadn't noticed before, so like this calculated field, LOS days, relies on or is dependent on these, like the admit date and discharge date here. Something seems to be stuck. Let me refresh this real quick. So we're on X-ray. That's something I would explore, but it seemed like once I had drilled down into some of these other calculations, it was stuck. Trying to find, that's the one, I think. Okay. Or maybe this one. Okay. So to me, so what this is representing is that P12 is dependent on pipeline month, and pipeline month is dependent on time of request. I don't know for anybody else, but I would want to see that in reverse. Like I would want to see time of request at the top and then kind of like P12 and then pipeline month. I'm seeing some agreement there. So yeah, so that, I guess I hadn't noticed it was, the tree was built that way, but just something I would prompt it to correct or be more specific in how I wanted to see that. Okay, so prompt 2 gets us the calculation inventory, which is up to this point. And then the next prompt is where we start getting some help in maybe in just like making this workbook more efficient. And that is the prompt 3 is going to get us, I'm just pasting that in the chat now. What this will get us is an inventory of all the unused fields. And as far as I've explored and know, if you use the hide field, so if you're in your workbook and you've got a bunch of unused fields here, as far as I know, maybe someone can correct me, but if I hide the field, then it removes it from the query that's going to go back if you're on a live data source, or even if you're on Hyper, the query that goes to the Hyper. So the more field, like this one we saw has over 400 fields, and if we're not using 300 of them, then obviously we don't need those in the query of the data, but the data is still being queried for those fields until they're hidden. Even better than that is, to rewrite the source query to have it build based on only the fields that you're using. So that's actually something I just would include or add to the prompt, would be like maybe rewrite my SQL query to include only used fields. The other thing, it's not in this version, but the other possibility here is to have a button that just, it says hide unused fields. So once it discovers all the unused fields, then actually have an action button here that would hide those fields within the workbook. I don't know that so if you're looking at the XML, there is a tag for hidden, or an element of a tag for hidden. And that's how the fields, I don't know if, I would have to look at like what that action button would actually do. I imagine it would just add that tag to the fields that are unused. So that in the canvas of the workbook, then it just won't display or use those fields. So like it says here, 371 fields are referenced by no worksheet and no calculation. So this is going to look at if a field is being used by, if like a field is a parent of a dependent field, calculated field, and or if it's on any workbook. So if neither of those are true, then it's going to flag it here as unused. And we can see there are those 371. So we could actually get this down to under 100 fields that are used in this case. Again, if there are calculated fields that are built but not used, then those will also be here. Looks like quite a few of the there are 42 calculated fields, but it looks like, actually, sorry, this isn't unused calculated. This is from the previous step, all calculated fields again. I wonder though if, yeah, so this calls out calculated fields that are unused at the top. So 4 of the 42 calculated fields are not used. Then I want to make sure if there are there any questions on like the how the files are hosted, localhost, or anything about that? I know that that's like that's a kind of an uncommon Tableau thing. So if there are, just put that in the chat if you have a question about like the trex or the other files. I'll look at that as well. So for this, we're on stage 3. If I go to the stages and look at stage 3, so stage 3 has its own trex, and then the trex is, I'll just use one of these. Yeah. So actually in, we'll look, just open. Let me go back to the other one. So I got a couple chats. Let's see. Within within the T-Rex, it's running the index file, the index HTML file on that localhost server. So what that's doing is running this, which won't necessarily have any elements in it, but potentially it depends on how it's set up. Sometimes this won't run at all because it's actually looking for only being able to run within a Tableau workbook. But in this case, this runs, and you can see this, the web page is just like it was in the Tableau workbook, but we could do all the same things from just by opening that index file like in a browser. And then what the index file is doing is pointing at the JavaScript files and the style to provide, the JavaScript will provide like all the functions and calculations that it needs to build this. So let's go to stage 4. So the prompt for this, get ready in the chat. This one, we're going to start looking at the lineage of the workbooks and the sheets. So this is prompt 4. And once that runs, obviously if what the skill does is help the outcome or the output of a prompt kind of be, every prompt you put in like won't necessarily have the same response, obviously. But what the skill helps it do is become more consistent with the responses. But what I just wanted to say is that when I ran this last night, and so I just want to call out that if you run this same prompt, then it might not actually look exactly like this or have the same functionality, just because of the nature of AI and running prompts. So what this prompt 4 added was this new tab called lineage, and it's obviously similar to the calculated fields, but what it adds is the element of the sheets and the workbooks. So, and it kind of gives you an idea of what happens. So sometimes you run into that scenario where you want to delete a field, or you think you can delete a field, and you get the pop-up that says, if you delete this field, then some of your sheets might break. This will actually tell you like what impact deleting a field could have. So if I just look at LOS days, so this looks like so I need a tree navigator. That's why I can't get back up if I drill down into one of these easily. So if I were to delete this, see a cohort, it's relying on details, but these two fields are actually referencing this LOS days. So if I go to admit, it's sorry, admins being referenced by LOS days. So it doesn't look like there are. Okay, so there are. So this tells you if I were to edit or delete LOS days, then these two LOS P12 and LOS T12 would be impacted. So these two fields are referencing this LOS days. It also calls out the worksheets that are on there. So this is directly related to that scenario where you want to delete a field and you don't know where it is in your workbook. This kind of tells you. So that field is being used by these two fields and also is on these 4 worksheets. So potentially you're going to break these worksheets. And if I were to drill down into like P12, then I can see P12 is on another worksheet and also is being referenced by these 2 fields. So that this field like obviously has a high impact if any changes are made to it. It'd be good to add in like a impact score or something. So something like this field, have a score for how many downstream elements or objects are impacted by its change. So that'd be something I would follow up on that prompt with. So the next feature is going to be, let's put this, it's just going to be kind of some polish on the workbook. It's going to add, so we're up to this point. Let me put prompt 5 in here. Prompt 5. So then once we have prompt 5, then this is just kind of, it's redundant, I guess, but just sometimes it's nice to see things in different ways. So what this adds is, again, here are the sheets that are, it's calling orphan, but they're just not, there are sheets that aren't on any of the dashboards that are in here. So just potential for cleaning up and making your workbook lighter, and also anything you can remove that's unused will kind of provide that performance boost. The other thing about this is, it's calling out the number of fields that are on each of these sheets, and potentially, once you clear, if you were to clear these sheets, then you might have a bunch of fields also that you could clear, because currently, even if they're on an unused sheet, they're still being called out as used. So a lot of potential for cleanup in those, in the sheets and this unused. Again, if I were to go further into a feature on this, I would prompt this to allow me a button, if possible, to kind of delete these sheets that are unused just from this interface. So let's see, I do want to see if it's possible. The idea that we could potentially have a button that, that hides all of these unused fields. So I'm gonna do that one, that prompt live, and then we can look. sure I hit the right, actually. I'll just start a new prompt. I didn't have this one prepared, but so I'm just gonna say for the unused fields sheet, add a button that will hide those fields, and if possible, a button that can delete unused sheets. So we're on that. The reason I started a new chat there is I don't usually run out of usage on my plan, but I have been since I've been using Fable more. But the what I found that there's, I don't know if this, I'll look at this. If you go here and you're looking at your account usage, I used to look at this all the time, but not as much anymore, but kind of in between, Anthropic started to add a lot more detail in the usage, which I found really helpful because I didn't know this, but I mean, I knew that if you have a large context, it's going to be eating more tokens, obviously. But the other day when I saw this, it was like 67 or 65+ % of my usage was using these high context prompts, because I generally would start a chat and then kind of just run with that chat forever. So when I saw this, that was like eating into a lot of my token usage, then I just started, if I have a new idea now, I just start it in a new chat. And another nice thing, I haven't noticed the impact or not of it, but yesterday I updated VS Code, and one of the updates is actually related to Claude, where your Claude chats will, like, they're synced within a session. So rather than all of these chats kind of working independently, even if they might be working on the same files or workbooks, now they're coordinated, as far as I could tell from like the update notes on that. So even a lot, it's even a lot easier and a lot better now to use shorter chats, since they can, these chats can speak to each other. So it's easy to have a bunch of kind of shorter term chats going. So something nice. And it's already, this just last week was up over 60%. So I've been able to get that down just by using new chats. Something else. It's nice. Let's hit this export JSON. I didn't kind of like see. I'll put this in here. So what that export does is create this JSON file. Let me make sure. Okay, so what this contains is it's basically the full audit of that workbook. So if you were to save this, then I mean there's potential for kind of recreating that full UI based analysis just with this file, rather than having rather than having to have the workbook and all the logic and functions that break open the workbook, you could rebuild the analysis with just this JSON file. If you, let me see here. I'm trying to see if automatically a potentially like a way to read this or reuse this JSON file. Like that's something I would ask for, so that if there's someone who needed to understand the workbook but they don't have Tableau, then potentially you can provide this JSON and a processor, something that takes the JSON and converts it into HTML, or converts it, into a readable. For anyone trying to audit a workbook or just understand the workbook, like let's say your end users, like all of my end users, don't generally have or use Tableau at all. But this could be something you could potentially build into the like the workbook notes. Actually, yeah, the workbook notes, and also, I would look at building this out to include more of a description of what the workbook is, how it's functioning, and what it's providing also. So that's the JSON that you can export. So back to the workbook also, let's see if, so this is still running, and this is the request for unused field sheet deletion, or sorry, yeah, unused fields, the hiding button if possible. It looks like it's getting towards the end, starting to test. And what other things we want to look at? Also, so this is running on localhost, but let's say you wanted to publish this to Tableau Cloud. You'll have to have that. You'll have to have the, not necessarily the trex, but all the web element files. Those have to be hosted somewhere publicly, somewhere that Cloud would have access to if you're on Cloud or server. What I found that's nice on server, I don't know if this is recommended or not, but when I was on server years ago, I would actually host, on Windows. It was a Windows server. I would host these trex and the web element HTML files directly on that Windows machine, and then that was just like a really easy way to give Tableau server access to all of the extensions that I was building then. I don't know if anyone else, I know, Michael, you've been doing and publishing some of these. GitHub pages is obviously an easy and public and free way to do that. What other, I saw someone just use a small railway app. Keith on his post the other day. Anyone else using other methods for hosting that they like or are easy? You can throw that in the chat or come off mute, either way. Vercel, yeah, I like Vercel. So Vercel is nice, and it doesn't usually run up costs. Heroku. Then there's Railway. I think Railway will end up costing a little more than Vercel. Yeah. So Vercel is stateless, right? So it's so it doesn't have, it's not like trying to run that server all the time. It just, I think it spins up when it's being accessed. So you don't have that like runtime cost 24/7. And they all have like, I don't know how much Heroku does anymore. It actually does, yeah. Heroku, Vercel, GitHub Pages is just free. The public one, but Heroku, Vercel, and Railway all have like pretty good. You could host these for free on their free tier pretty easily. And then, yeah, so those are ones that are nice. This is still running, so yeah, I know we're past the hour that was, I guess it was actually scheduled for an hour and a half. So if anyone needs to jump, then obviously that's all good. The recording will go out in full once this is done, and I'll send that out through the registration just to anyone who registered. The any other questions while this is just kind of running? I think it's getting towards finishing up. Looks like it is. Questions about Claude or the setup? The setup for this would just all be within that skills file. Yeah, you just asked for that. So yeah, I'll just share that file here. Let me see if I can drop it easily. Hardest part is keeping the knowing where the latest version of the skill file is. So I'm in. This one actually is the one I included. I prompted it to update the skill with that one error, that last error, that first error that we saw. So let's see if this drops. Actually, doesn't look like I can drop it in the chat. Let's see if I can. Nope, won't let me load from my computer. I will, when I send out the link for the recording, I'll include the skill, and also I'll include this kind of like, well, I think I'll probably include the scaffolding of this workbook so that it's already, the extension's already loaded in there. Okay, cool. Was that, Michael, was that on the first, just from the first prompt? Or yeah.
I got to prompt 3, and it wasn't so much anything to do with the prompts, but you know how sometimes it just doesn't like the TRX file or the certificate from your local host.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just kind of been trying to catch up. But what's cool, you talked about, you know, your prompt will get something different from my prompt, and because I've been building other extensions, it's kind of got like my UI, but still very similar to kind of what you built. It's really cool. I tried to share a screenshot, but the chat didn't let me do it. So
Yeah,
thank
it
you.
wasn't letting me share other things.
Yeah.
But,
thank you for this.
setting I have. But yeah, thanks for attending. So if there's any other like feature that anyone wants to see, I will run those. If you put a list here, I'll keep building if you're jumping off, and I can run those. It looks like this one just finished. But if you do have an idea, throw it in the prompt and I'll include that. Let's see. Yeah, thank you all for attending. I know I kind of do these last minute and it's a Saturday, so I appreciate everyone joining, being interested. So let's see.
Thanks so much, Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Michael.
Have a good one. Bye.
Thanks a lot, Eric.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks. So, okay, let me just make sure this makes sense. But so this ran through the prompt, and I actually need to see, because I didn't tell it which iteration of the file to update. So I'll actually have to look and see if, I'm guessing it did this workbook X-ray, but I'm just going to look at like timestamps here and see if that is the case. Probably 10:09. So it's likely it was updated here. I'm just going to tell it to actually add another stage so that I can like distinguish between the iterations of this, and then I can provide these stages also. That's going to take another minute probably. So I'm going to load what it built separately as a new dashboard. I'll just call it stage 6 for now. Again, just going to pull the extension object over and then open up that folder, and that was going to be here. So 804. The other thing along with like this is that the T-Rex doesn't usually have to change much. So you won't necessarily see any change in a T-Rex file once it's created. So that's why this one is kind of set even like a week ago it was built. But to answer your question, Douglas, the cursor would work, yes. So in cursor, you would just select, I mean, any model will work. I've just been using Claude more recently, but before Claude, I was on cursor, and like even if you're not using the Claude models, the cursor models are really good as well. So I think the understanding of those models of the extensions is I haven't found much difference there. It's generally just like what the end product will look like. Cursor is going to kind of have its path or direction that you can also steer, but so that's what I've seen most is not understanding or quality between models, but just kind of the not quality of functionality, but differences in kind of like the end product, like what the code will actually look like, what the UI will look like. That will vary between all of the models. So, but I haven't really seen any quality. Like I think quality is on par between those. Yeah, I can publish this. I'm actually testing out a new platform. I don't know if it's ready to share. Let me see. I've actually like forever there's like this battle between being able to build these and run them and host them and have them work on cloud. And one thing, like with my current organization, is that it's just like it took me a year literally to kind of like work through the process of having a very simple web app location that I can host all of my extensions on for that organization. So I've built like more of a public. So Tableau obviously has the exchange, but it's limited to the like Tableau partners and exchange partners being able to publish there. So it's not that it's just not a place that everyone can host from. So I put together what would be like just a hosting site for extensions and the web elements. Um, if anyone is interested in testing that with me or for me, I'd love to get feedback on it. Basically, I'll share this. I'm working through some of the just some of the security HTTPS certificate things. So you'll see that now, but that's why I haven't really shared this yet. But basically, actually, I already have this one up there. So what I do is I give it the local URL that the Trex is using, and then I upload a zip file that has it has the Trex files and then also all of the web elements. So this one actually includes even the extension API file. And once that's up, then you can put in some details on the name, the version that it's on. The entry file is like the HTML file that the Trex is pointing at. And then what happens is once you have all of that in there, then you receive this download of a Trex that you can use, that you then use locally. So you download this Trex, and then so I'll just do that real quick and see. I don't know exactly what level this is at, but kind of getting into. I'll close this for now. Start another one. So this is the one on my TableauOps site. Let's see. So I'll pull this extension. I downloaded the Trex. Once this loads, this is actually getting like probably too many extensions running in it that it's slowed down quite a bit, but this would be very uncommon. I guess you might have a lot of extensions running, but kind of not really a general use case to have that many in here. So I download that. It's in my download folder. So when I select it, then I'm getting like what we've already seen because I've published that here. It's just running off of that publicly hosted files. So once those are up at this hosted site, then the thing that happens once you've published and you're working from like a hosted location is it just gets slower to iterate through. Like if you make a change and you want to see it on, in here, then you've got to republish those files, the HTML web-based files. So generally I would have the same exact package or set of files running locally and then hosted, and kind of develop off of the local. And then when I like it, I'll publish back to hosted. But we can see that it runs even from hosted, runs the same. This will be definitely a different version of this whole process, but let's see how it turns out. Again, just pops up nice and fast. Let's make this bigger. Actually very similar, even though it's been reprompted a few times. Thanks to the skill, we're getting pretty similar outputs every time I'm running that. So so these files are hosted publicly. Then you can check that here in the about. So I've got the workbook x-rays, the name, TableauOps, and then we can see the URL it's running from here, ext.tableauops. It just generates a random string for the URL when it's, let me see, when you get to down here, when you save, and it generates this. So the other thing you can do is to download a local version of that Trex. The other thing I would want to add in here would be to easily, part of this download, let's check. Actually, what I would want this to download would be like the full package. I would want it to download a local version of the Trex and all of the web files as they stood. So anyway, so Douglas, I'll reach out and get you a link to sign up here if you're interested in trying this out. And anybody else, let me know here or on LinkedIn, and I can get you guys set up. So let's look at, we're working on stage 6. Okay, so now it added a new stage. So let me delete some of this out. Delete this. 9 is, I will delete that one too. All right, so now we're gonna add the extension again. Let's see. And again, it's like, I don't know if it has to refresh each of the other iterations of the extension, and that's kind of why it's hanging, but definitely wouldn't suggest running that many of this extension in a workbook. What I can do then, I'm just going to delete these versions out. Let's see if that helps it. Generally, it would generally load a lot faster than that. So there's still a little bit of issue there, but. All right, so we got stage 6. We're gonna grab that manifest or Trex. You might hear this file referred to as the manifest in places. So just so that you're familiar with that name as well. Then let's expand this all. Get this workbook chosen. And what we were looking for was a function to hide the unused fields. Not seeing that really here. We got refresh, export. There's something at the bottom. There we go. Okay. Okay, so what it's added here, clean up, hide these fields, drop these sheets. Okay, so it put it all on this unused tab. Okay, so X-Ray cannot edit the workbook you have open. The extensions API is read-only. These buttons rewrite the workbook XML and download a cleaned copy. Okay, nice. So what this is saying again, just like how we have to tell the extension, the workbook that we're using, the extension can't actually modify the XML either. It can't read it or modify it. This is all being read through the web elements. So this is just saying it's going to create a new copy. It's going to modify the XML, which it's a good practice anyway. Anytime you're modifying XML, you want to keep keep a lot of backups of that because it just is really touchy and not, I'll say, not recommended. Yeah, so be careful with modifying XML. But it looks like this will do a new copy of the workbook without or with these fields as hidden. There's a button here to select all fields. If I check none, okay, they were previously selected here, so it looks like that's nice. You can decide, if maybe there obviously are fields that you don't want to hide that are still usable. And let's see okay, this is a list of all the sheets that are unused. And so you can choose between those. What I'm going to do is, it's actually what the options or what the function is going to hide fields and delete unused worksheets. And you can do either of those or both. I'm going to click both and see how we do. It's going to ask for a new, or the location to save the new file. I'm just going to make sure to go back to where this one is, which is here. And it's appended the cleaned naming into that workbook. And I see I get the download message just like I would if I were exporting some data to CSV or an image. You get that same prompt, and we also get a message here that it hid the 373 fields, 5 sheets were deleted and cleaned up, and that we can open the new copy. So let me see how that turned out. That's here under cleaned. It's opening up. Okay, so just so you know, whenever you have an extension in a workbook and then you reopen it, it's going to prompt you. This is just good practice, like security safety practice. It's going to let you know there's an extension running there, and so it's going to, give you the information about the extension, the developer, and so it's never, like Tableau desktop will never just run an extension without your approval. So that's what this is. And it's actually by sheet. So we're running these 5 or 6 different, that's interesting actually. I did not save this workbook. Hold on, let's like redo this. So on that thought, let me save this. I think it built off of the whatever version had been saved, so it didn't have this stage 6 in it. So I'll rerun that. I don't know if it will actually work, but oops, try that again. Oh no, on that thought, the each one of those tabs I had its own. They're all versions of basically the same extension, but Tableau's looking at them as distinct extensions, each of them. So every time, not every time, but the first time you open a workbook and go to a tab that has an extension, it's going to give you that prompt. So just be aware of that. It's not an error or anything. It's just information. So we'll save here again. And we'll replace that. And then done. And then we should be able to go here. Let's actually do file open. Get the clean version open again. All right, so we get the allow on stage 3, which we're on, and then, oh, wow, okay. I'll have to look at what that's doing, but we can see that it still doesn't have that 6th stage tab that is in this version. So there must be some snapshot that it takes of the XML at some point that's not actually related to saving it. So yeah, that would be obviously function enhancement of the like reprompting that stage. But let's go all the way to stage 5 and choose this workbook. That actually brings up another interesting point and something that might be useful. I'm going to choose the cleaned workbook, and then it doesn't look like it worked. So there's still 376, but I do wonder if it did hide them, but the possibly the logic isn't. Well, it hid them, but actually it's the logic that is looking at unused fields isn't accurate. So another thing just to reprompt and fix, but I do want to see that stage 6 level here. So let me throw in this extension. Okay, the other interesting thing is that potentially you could have a workbook like this, call it review or whatever, and it could be pointed at multiple workbooks that you want to analyze. Obviously, we've seen issues with having a lot of extensions open in the same workbook, so you might not want to do that, but the potential is there to maybe have this workbook looking at 3 other or looking at 3 different dashboard files, kind of as a more centralized review workbook. But the other cool thing about this being in the workbook is you can share. You could share this workbook with someone, and it would have the extension loaded. The only thing there is that then you get into just like on Cloud, where the hosted files, it would have to be connected to hosted files. So this will be the last thing we look at, unless there are other questions. So you go to stages. I'm gonna go to 6. And then choose this clean version. Yeah, it doesn't update this. So yeah, we just have to have Claude look at the like I was saying, that tag that in the XML that actually does the hiding. You know, it's explicit in the XML what a hidden field is, and we just have to have this unused. Actually, it could, you know, you could do it any way. You could have it, those fields are still in the workbook and they're unused. They're hidden now. So there could be something here that called, you know, maybe they're unused, but they're already hidden. So they're taken out of the, you know, they're not impacting the performance of the workbook since they are hidden. But it would be good to have hidden. Oh, here we go. It is there. It tagged them as already hidden. So still showing them as unused, but hidden as well. So that's what I would expect to see. It looks like, okay, so that's just, there are 3 selected. The other part of this that's good is that it did delete the unused sheets. We can see now we've got 0 what it's calling orphan sheets, and yeah, we don't see those down here either. So it got the sheets nicely. There's just a little bit of I guess just a little more information about what this actually means, the unused versus hidden. So yeah, very cool, I think. Any feedback you guys have would be great. So generally I had been running prompts and they were kind of taking a lot of time and wasting time, in my opinion. But feedback that I've gotten is, you know, that's an issue, but also not being able to see some of the struggle between, you know, getting errors and being able to fix those and move on through the process has been other feedback. So trying to balance between those two. Today, you know, I had everything pre-prepared, so I didn't have to wait for prompts all the time. But we did see during some prompts those errors that can pop up. So any feedback on the once you see the recording or just the live would be awesome. Thanks, Douglas. Harris, let me see. Add sheet and dashboard performance metrics to the same extension. Be helpful to identify slow calculations and filters so we can optimize them. Yeah, that would be really nice to see, to have it run an analysis, like actually, you know, potentially could add those fields to a workbook and see, kind of try to do some recording like some of the other tools do on Claude. But that would be good to see here. I know one thing it does. It's not on this version. What I have seen it do automatically is just call out like really long calculated fields, you know, calculated fields that are, yeah, I don't know, thousands of characters and all that. So those generally get called out, but it would be good to see an actual recording of performance on how these were working, and actually like have it look at the calculations and try to provide more performant, you know, there's a dozen ways or 100 ways to do sometimes the same calculation. So potentially have a feedback and maybe a recommendation on the formulas that could be changed. So all good ideas, but I appreciate everyone attending and yeah, for your engagement. So thank you, and have a great evening or day, and hope to see you and hear from you on LinkedIn as well. So, thanks, everyone. We'll see you.